season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
Good morning. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn this morning is Teach Your Children Well by Graham Nash. The lyrics will be projected up on the slide. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, or just take in the song and the meaning of the words. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing or listening to Teach Your Children Well. Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Margaret Johnston. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am a friend of the church, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of our worship committee who make this service possible include Alec Peck, our music coordinator, who is also monitoring the sound system today, and Adam Wedeking, who monitors our visual and online connections. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind, an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. Welcome all who seek renewal in a weary world. Welcome all who come with love and energy to share. Welcome to those who worry for the future. Welcome each one who is grateful for today. In community, we share our strength with one another, and we keep the flame of love burning bright. Today, we will explore the power of music in critical times. Thank you for being with us this morning. Before we move into the service, there are a few announcements we would like to share. We will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all this information, and it is also available on our website. The first Sunday luncheon. Join us next week after the service for the first Sunday luncheon. Next week, we will celebrate Cinco de Mayo with Mexican-themed dishes. Donations are welcome, and all proceeds go to the church fund. Our annual flower communion will also be held next week, Sunday, May 4th. Join us in celebrating by bringing flowers from your garden, if possible, to share with our community. Don't worry if you forget, we will have extras. Our summer family barbecue fundraiser is on Saturday, May 17th at 1:30 p.m. Bring the whole family, invite your friends. Tickets are $25, children 6 to 12 are $12, children 5 and under eat for free. It will be on the lawn between the church building and the annex, on that side. Vegetarian options are provided. Please purchase your tickets in advance so we'll know how much food to prepare. The Social Environmental Justice Committee meeting is today in the annex at 1:30 this morning. And Adam, did you have any particular announcements to make from the committee? Great. You can find the Zoom link and more information on our church website under Social and Environmental Justice. This concludes today's announcements. Our time together is brief, but it is filled with joy. In that spirit, I invite you to turn to those around you, greet them, welcome them, and share that joy. For those on Zoom, you can use the Zoom wave gesture or turn on your camera and wave at us. Good morning. Welcome to all our visitors today, and welcome back to our old friends. We would love to chat with you during coffee hour in the parish hall after the service, where you can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave so we know you were here, and leave your contact information if you want updates on church events. After the service today, there will be a short discussion to share your reflections on the topic with us. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. And now, I invite you to sit back, take a slow, deep breath, as we move into the worship hour. You are welcome to read with me our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to live in service to humankind and all life in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. Today, we are happy to welcome back our friend Dr. Lee Greer to the pulpit. Lee Greer is an evolutionary biologist, educator, married to Linda, and father of 3. Lee and Linda have been members of UU Church of Riverside for years and recently moved to Montana, where they attend the UU Church of Billings, Montana. We are fortunate to have Lee continue giving his quarterly presentations via Zoom. Art, music, and song generally accompany the culture of any society. Sometimes, songs can lead to a revolt against that society. We will explore examples by singing songs of peace and rebellion against war, oppression, and exploitation from our world today. We have 2 lightings of sacred flames. The first is a remembrance candle for the Indigenous peoples who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. We remember that underneath us is the unceded land of several Indigenous people, including but not limited to the Cahuilla, the Luiseño, and the Cupeño. We light this sacred flame in their remembrance and in recognition of their ongoing struggle for freedom and dignity. Our second sacred flame is our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We are blessed with this space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's chalice lighting words are from What the World Needs Now is Love by Jackie DeShannon. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb. There are oceans and rivers enough to cross, enough to last till the end of time. Our next song this morning is Eve of Destruction by Barry McGuire. The lyrics will be projected on the slide. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, or just take in the song and the meaning of the words. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing or listening to Eve of Destruction.
The Eastern world, it is exploding, violence flaring, bullets loading. You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting? And even the Jordan River has bodies floating. But you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fears I'm feeling today? If the button is pushed, there's no running away. There'll be no one to save with the world in a grave. Take a look around you, boy. It's bound to scare you, boy. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Yeah, my blood's so mad, feels like coagulating. I'm sitting here just contemplating. I can't twist the truth, it knows no regulation. Handful of senators don't pass legislation, and marches alone can't bring integration. When human respect is disintegrating, this whole crazy world is just too frustrating. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Think of all the hate there is in Red China, then take a look around to Selma, Alabama. You may leave here for 4 days in space, but when you return, it's the same old place. The pounding of the drums, the pride and disgrace. You can bury your dead, but don't leave a trace. Hate your next door neighbor, but don't forget to say grace. And tell me over and over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. No, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him.
This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code shown here, and it is also on our church website and in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You get the full value of the card, and the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see Dinah Rowe or Robert Braun in the church office if you are interested in purchasing these cards. Today is 50-50 Sunday, which is held on the 4th Sunday of the month. To donate to the 50-50 program, half of each designated donation goes to the featured recipient and half to the general fund. This is in addition to your pledge to the church. Please write 50-50 on the memo line of your check or on the cash envelope you find in the pews. Today, we are donating to the maintenance fund, and I believe Avery was supposed to come and give us a report on that. I'm not sure if somebody is grabbing him from the other room, but hopefully we will get to hear a little bit about what the maintenance fund is doing for the church and its physical upkeep, not only of the building, but of the grounds as well. And here's Avery.
Good morning. Maintenance doesn't have an extensive report, and in fact, not on building maintenance, It's spring and planting season, and we have planted 4 trees, compliments of the nursery and the city electric company. They are peach, nectar plum, cherry, and, pardon me?
Nectarine, perhaps?
Nectar plum. It's a hybrid. And it's replacing one that got ripped up and didn't take when we replanted it. It was straggling, and so we replaced it with another one. And the other one is apricot. So we shall have those fruit trees bearing. They see fit. The peach tree in front of the annex is coming along nicely. It's going to bear a lot of peaches. It's heavy laden already with early fruit. What else? Maintenance. What have we accomplished? The lock on the door in the restroom, the north restroom, the larger restroom, in this building is not functioning yet. Bear with us. Please knock before you use that restroom. It is serviceable, and it just stays closed, and so people can see the sign. What else? That's about it. We haven't done a lot of maintenance in the last month. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery, for all your hard work that you do to maintain this wonderful space. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. To those who give of their time and talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. To all of you who have joined us here today, thank you for the gift of your presence. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? A tote bag will also be passed around to collect food and hygiene items for our local community. Our next hymn is number 1010 in the teal hymnal, We Give Thanks. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn 1010, We Give Thanks. Our meditation today is the song Sound of Silence, written by Paul Simon.
Darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light. Split the night and touch the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never shared. No one did disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know, silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you, but my words like silent raindrops fell, echoing the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls, the tenement halls, whispering the sound of silence.
Can everyone hear me okay? I'm not hearing anybody actually. So can I be heard? Okay. All right. Excellent. I just want to be sure that when I display a song here, it'll play okay there. So I'm happy to leave the controls there if that will actually solve any technical issues.
Now I would like to introduce Lee Greer speaking to us on War and Peace, a meditation in our world through songs of peace.
I just wanted to make a few comments first as we go into this. We already discussed how sometimes in the introduction how sometimes songs can be used as a revolt against system. Usually they just simply reflect culture and are not a revolt. but sometimes they are, and we want to highlight some of the cases and the times when they are, and when music is actually threatening to dominant systems of oppression. For instance, songs of resistance in the American experience include the so-called Negro and slave spirituals, which use the dominant religion of the masters and metaphors drawn from that to subvert slavery and to talk about freedom and liberation and uh, and the end to a pilgrimage. And later, these songs were also used to resist Jim Crow and racial apartheid within the United States. The Jim Crow laws were a system of laws where there was segregation, oppression, and disenfranchisement, economic and otherwise, of former slaves, former the freedmen, particularly in the South, but they could also spread in other areas of the country.
Hey Lee,
Yes.
you might want to double check which screen you're sharing. I think we are not seeing the slides of your presentation.
Oh, okay. I have not started sharing the next slide yet. So,
Oh, you were sharing your screen.
oh, sorry.
Perhaps it wasn't intentional. Either way, double
Like,
check what you intend to share.
yeah, was this what I was sharing here? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm leaving it here for just a moment before then I'll move into the next slide. Yeah. I mean into proper showing of the slides. I just wanted to uh, do this introduction here. Now, of course, what these songs were like, arising from the centuries of darkness of the transatlantic and Mediterranean slave trade, was the importing of African rhythms, melodies, and musical forms, and also African spirituality into the resistance against the dominant culture. In addition, there was another revolt beyond that, and that is symbolized most famously and most poignantly by the blues of the Mississippi Delta. W.C. Handy discovered in 1903 when he saw a blues singer take a guitar and put a knife on the guitar, and he said the weirdest music that I ever heard in my life came out in involving, of course, note bending and many of the metaphors which were not even present in the ancient rebellious music of flamenco in old Europe, with Roma and so-called gypsy music. But the blues, the Delta blues, not only subverted the the system of Jim Crow and oppression, but also had the revolt of the myth of the wandering singer, blues singer, who somehow was associated with the dark side of the Christian religion. And of course, it was out of the Delta blues, particularly in the work of Robert Johnson, that rock and roll was born. And even though it wasn't so much, it was some cultural rebellion in the 1950s. In the 1960s is when folk and rock became a symbol of rebellion against the establishment. And it's some of those periods that we're going to look at briefly now with some sample songs, some of which you've already heard. And we'll also discuss just how threatening this in fact was to the establishment coming out of the McCarthy era and all. All right, so here we are going into slideshow, and then, okay, so, and we're going to relate this to today and our situation at this time too, because we are again in a time of multiple wars in multiple countries around the world, and at least one live ongoing genocide at this moment. Of course, Sudan and what is happening against Yemen again now are pushing the categories back toward that again because it's deliberate targeting of civilians and all. Well, this next song uh, was written in 1963 by by Bob Dylan, who for a while was a one of the minstrels of resistance against the Cold War consensus and against the various wars that the empire was involved in. Later on, all the pressures that were put on him, and a lot of pressures were put on him from many different quarters, he retreated from that position, but he left us some of the iconic songs of that era. Now, what you'll see here, because I can't control all the images that are present, I want to highlight that at that time of liberation, which was the throwing off of colonialism, of formal colonialism in the post-war era, post-World War era. Of course, we now live in the time of neoliberal neocolonialism, which is economic, but still military as well. There were a series of leaders arising in the developing world that were rebelling against colonialism, and an old cold warrior, John F. Kennedy, uh, who during his brief presidency switched to say we must. Well, he had started this process in the 1950s. Say we must stand with the revolution that that is going on in the third world. Patrice Lumumba, here the independence leader of Congo, pictured on the left there, a green light was given by the in a cabinet meeting in the Eisenhower administration with Allen Dulles as head of the CIA to take him out. And he was assassinated, and the new president was not told about it because he was inaugurated a couple months later, and he was not told until several weeks after the assassination that it had taken place. This is a picture of Kennedy at the moment that he was told that Patrice Lumumba had been assassinated by a CIA that was not under the control of the presidency there. You will also see reference to
Sorry, Lee, for interrupting.
yes.
Now I know you're trying to show us some pictures because you keep referencing, but we can't see anything still.
Okay, so I think we should go directly.
Yeah, so Adam will help share the screen from our side. If you
Yep,
bear with us with just 1 second, sorry about that.
absolutely. That was what I was concerned. I was concerned that maybe that the music might not go, or but I can see that even the slides were not showing. So I believe it is slide 21 where we are now, if I'm not mistaken. Slide 22. There we are. Yes, and on the left you can see Patrice Lumumba, the Prime Minister of the newly independent Congo, before he was assassinated by the CIA. And in the middle, you can see a, a photograph taken of John F. Kennedy as who had only been president a few weeks, as he was informed by phone that this assassination had taken place, authorized by the previous administration. On the right side, and of course, many of the wars that we have been involved in the post-World War era are, in fact, colonial wars, wars to ensure domination of indigenous peoples, domination of um, of the economies and the resources of developing countries. Even if lip service was given to independence, it was not true independence. Here are two of the leaders of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, who served as the leader of Libya from 1969 until he turned power over in 1977. That's not what you'll be told in the Western press. To the Jamahiriya type of governing council of Arab socialism, third way Arab socialism. By the way, the only leader in the Middle East and of what, because all three of the Abrahamic religions were deeply complicit in the African Holocaust, in the transatlantic slave trade. The only one who apologized for the Islamic role in the slave trade. Of course, there with Nelson Mandela, the terrorists, but now recognized as freedom fighter against apartheid South Africa. So what you'll see is a flash of imagery of along with the other masters of war of Muammar Gaddafi, but that's because in the next song, what Westerners made the song, so they just put a bunch of images in there. So next slide. Masters of War, 1963.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Come, you masters of war. You build the big guns. You build a dead plane. You build a dead plane. You build the bombs. You hide behind walls. You hide behind desks. I just want you to know I can see through your masks. You'd have never done nothing but build to destroy. You play with my world like it's your little toy. You put a gun in my hand. You hide from my eyes. And you turn and run farther when the fast bullets fly. Just like Judas of old, you lie and deceive. When a war can be won, you want me to believe, but I see through your eyes, and I see through your brain. I see through the water that runs down my drain. You fasten all the triggers, but the others fire. You sit back and watch while the death count gets higher. You hide in your mansion while the young people's blood flows out of their bodies and is buried in the mud. You've known the worst fear can never be hurled. Fear to bring children into the world, for threatening my baby, unborn and unnamed. I'm young. I say I'm unlearned. There's one thing I know. Though I'm younger than you, even Jesus would never forgive what you do. Let me ask you one question. Is your money that good? Will it buy you forgiveness? Do you think that it could? I think you will find when your debt takes its toll, all the money you made will never buy back your soul. And I hope that you die. Your death will come soon. I'll follow your casket on a paid afternoon, and I'll watch while you're lowered down to your deathbed. And I'll stand over your grave to make sure that you're dead.
Right inside the heart, loving us, calling us, protecting us.
Don't give up now.
Next slide. Now, in the mid 1960s, the war in Vietnam was ramping up. The National Security Memorandum 263, signed by John Kennedy about a few weeks before his assassination, which ordered the withdrawal of all U.S. advisors out of Vietnam and the end of all U.S. involvement by the end of 1965, was countermanded by the following president, which with National Security Memorandum 273, which began the process of a term heard throughout the 60s, escalation, raising the number of troops until there were more than 500,000 U.S. troops within there, fighting local indigenous people who, of course, there's always the whole home field advantage of people that are fighting on their own land. The U.S., of course, lost that war, but at terrible cost of millions of Vietnamese lives and tens of thousands of the invaders of American lives. And Phil Oakes, one of the singers in the 60s who actually was harassed into suicide. There was a long series of operations with the FBI did operations against the civil rights movement called COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program is what it stood for. And the CIA, which is not supposed to be involved in the United States, had an operation against singers of that time, and it reads like a who's who of singer-songwriters of the time. Phil Oakes was on that list, and that was called Operation Chaos. And here is Phil Oakes reviewing the history of American wars in the 1964 song, I Ain't Marching Anymore. Next.
To the Battle of New Orleans at the end of the early British wars. The young land started growing, the young blood started flowing, but I ain't a marching anymore. killed my share of Injuns in 1,000 different fights. I was there at the Little Big Horn. I heard many men lying, I saw many more dying, but I ain't marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with a saber and a gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I stole California from the Mexican land, fought in the bloody Civil War. Yes, I even killed my brothers and so many others, but I ain't marching anymore. For I marched to the battles of the German trench in a war that was bound to end all wars. Oh, I must have killed 1 million men and now they want me back again, but I ain't marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with the saber and the gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I flew the final mission in the Japanese skies, set off the mighty mushroom roar. When I saw the cities burning, I knew that I was learning that I ain't marching anymore. Now the labor leaders screaming when they close the missile plant. United Fruit screams at the Cuban shore. Call it peace or call it treason, call it love or call it reason, but I ain't marching anymore. No, I ain't marching anymore.
Now, when as the war went on and on and on in Vietnam, Lyndon Johnson, the incumbent president, saw that he could not run because of unpopularity of the war, and his other programs have been sidelined by the fact of just a continual escalation and quagmire of the war in Vietnam. Richard Nixon, with his right-hand man, Henry Kissinger, who was a protege of Nelson Rockefeller, who was governor of New York, but wasn't in the Republican race any further. They actually, and of course we know this now, wasn't known then, that they actually contacted the South Vietnamese during the peace talks that were looking to have a stalemate there in 1968. And he said, look, he told the government in Saigon, which was our ally, he said, look, we'll get you a better deal. Just hold out till past the election, and we'll follow up on that. Now, of course, there had been a series of assassinations in the 60s, starting with when our coups came home. And these are things that these are matters of historical record now. Not that you would hear it on corporate media, but they are, thousands of pages have been written on these. The plot that took out President Kennedy, the plot that took out Malcolm X, the two plots that within a month of each other in 1968 made sure that Martin Luther King was dead and that Robert Kennedy was dead as well. And matter of fact, the King family won a $1 lawsuit against some of the conspirators in a civil trial in the 1990s, covered by the foreign press, demonstrating William Pepper, an attorney from the civil rights era, ran the case, demonstrating that there was a plot that took out King in Memphis in 1968. Well, Richard Nixon came in. Of course, there was no magical peace plan of any sort, and he escalated further. 1970, the year following his first year in office, 1969. He, with Happy Henry Kissinger, engineered an expansion of the war in Southeast Asia into Laos and Cambodia, and campuses across the United States erupted. Now the song that we opened up with was a Crosby, Stills, and Nash song, "Teach Your Children Well," right? The record, because that was a big hit, their record company wanted to keep promoting that. But when the Kent State Massacre and also Jackson State happened too, there was a killing there as well. Happened in the protests against the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia, the so-called secret war in Cambodia. Of course, it became known. Secrets have a way of coming out, and Crosby, well, Neil Young, who came to be associated with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So it was the four of them for significant periods. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. He wrote a song called "Ohio" to commemorate the deaths at Kent State, and they insisted that it be released immediately against the record labels because they wanted to milk the last hit. So this was released in shortly after May the 4th, 1970, when it was written within a very few weeks here. This is Ohio. And you can hear the anguish of the anti-war movement at that time when they realized, look, the war is coming home. Next. Now, it's important to remember that this series of wars, not only in Southeast Asia and in Africa and in South and Central America and in the Middle East, they're all colonial wars, part of colonial projects. And we have one of the longest examples of armed resistance to foreign invasion by indigenous peoples in Ireland. Okay, that would be a whole topic in itself, but the people of Ireland have often been some of the most aware, just like students in the United States. Then, of course, they were the conscience of the nation then, and the students who are standing against the genocide going on in the Middle East, they are the conscience of the United States today as well. Of course, they're being met with oppression, with suppression, and all that. Just to review, the Irish resistance starts in the 1100s. Okay, during the Norman invasion, of course, the plantation of Ulster which started the segregation in Northern Ireland under Elizabeth I. Religion was used, of course, in that war, just like in some of the current wars as well. The Ulster Plantation, of course, there was massacres in 1640. Oliver Cromwell's, the whole thing, to hell or to Connacht, which is the rocky west part of Ireland. There was, of course, ultimately the potato famine later in the 19th century. To hell or to Connacht was, by the way, a genocidal call to get rid of the Irish, starve as many of them as possible. And of course, it was repeated using the excuse of the invisible hand of the market under British capitalism, which was the capitalist center of the world prior to the rise of the United States, particularly after the First World War. Much stronger after the Civil War in the United States, and then much more after the First World War. And there was the Easter 1916 uprising that led to the Civil War, where partition happened between Northern Ireland, where Ulstermen had been planted in the 1600s. By Ulstermen, that means in the northern province of Ireland, Scottish Protestants were brought in to displace the native Catholics there. And that whole conflict simmered up until it became white hot again in the last set of troubles, 1969 to 1998. And I lived in Ireland in the late 80s, early 90s, before the Good Friday Agreement. And this is a reference to irregular forces, the Black and Tans, which the British used to repress Irish independence. If Ireland, who continues to stand, and you can see their solidarity with the colonized people of Palestine there in this mural in West Belfast. All right, next. Come Out, You Black and Tans. It's an Irish, traditional Irish tune with these words.
I was born on a Dublin street where the loyal drums did beat. The loving English feet that walked all over us. And every single night when me dad would come home tight, he'd invite the neighbours out with this chorus. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Killishandra. Come, let us hear you tell how you slandered great Parnell when you taught them well and truly persecuted. What are the sneers and jeers that you loudly let us hear when our leaders of 16 were executed? Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes Chandra. Come tell us how you slew them owl Arabs 2 by 2. Like the Zulus, they had spears, a bow and arrows. How bravely you faced one with your 16-pounder gun, and you frightened them damn natives to the marrow. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down at Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Kilishandra. The time is coming fast, and I think this day is near, when each Shonin traitor he will run before us. And if there'll be a need, well, our kids will say Godspeed with a verse or two of singing this fine chorus. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Kilishandra. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Kilishandra.
Now, in the 1970s, before we moved to the 1980s, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, as anti-colonialism was taking off, one of the paradigmatic struggles of people for independence was the Algerian civil war. Well, it's called a civil war, but it's really a war of independence against France. And Frantz Fanon, who was one of the leading lights of anti-colonial struggle in sub-Saharan Africa, wrote many, many books. The most famous, of course, is translated in English as The Wretched of the Earth, but it's actually a terrible translation. Les Damnés de la Terre is the actual title, which means the damned of the earth, and it gets people into the mind of people that have been colonized and oppressed and are fighting back, and of course that's what happened in the struggle when Algeria finally liberated itself. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a brilliant introduction to this 1961 book, Les Damnés de la Terre. He was the French anti-colonial, not always consistently, but anti-colonial and existentialist philosopher. He, of course, one of the founders, his companion, one of the founders, Simone de Beauvoir, one of the founders of modern feminism, who was also an existentialist philosopher. He wrote a brilliant lyrical panegyric to Fanon's work. But Fanon later removed this precisely because Sartre did not see as clearly as Fanon that the dark fate befalling the indigenous Palestine was the same as colonialism everywhere else, including in Algeria and in Congo and wherever else. And he went on to write many more books toward the African Revolution, Alienation and Freedom, and so forth, up until in the early 60s. Now, we know that nuclear weapons, of course, made their debut in 1945, even though one of the most senior scientists clearly saw, and his name was Niels Bohr, okay, one of the founders of quantum theory, and one of the great consciences of humankind at that time. He saw clearly that nuclear weapons made it such that war ultimately is impossible. He understood, even though he used his idea, because he was also a mystical sort, so he used the idea of complementarity, which he also used in quantum mechanics, but he applied that to what we now call evolutionary game theory, and he saw that we are now forced to be in an open world. And we do know after the fall of the Berlin Wall that in fact key scientists in the West made sure that scientists in the Soviet Union also had the weapons so that there would not be war. There would not be a nuclear war. Of course, there was the terrible miscarriage of justice with the execution of the Rosenbergs, you know, and and so forth, and the hounding of Alger Hiss by 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 mob-controlled congressman and later president of the United States, Richard Milhous Nixon, at that in the whole Hiss affair. Well, of course, we came very, very close to nuclear war in 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We also came in 1983 very close. Matter of fact, there were a series of actions with the introduction of intermediate nuclear weapons. Later, of course, there were treaties outlawing them, which the current president, who was also president number 45, pulled us out of. The Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty and many other treaties which the United States has been backing out of, which brought us to the place that the Warsaw Pact actually thought that some of the war games happening with NATO might be the start of nuclear weapons, and that was in September of 1983. That was very close, and someone basically sat Ronald Reagan down and said, "Look, this is your jokes about we've outlawed the Soviet Union and the bombing begins in 5 minutes," which the Soviets heard. The mic was hot, and these war games, this could well be the end of us. And of course, that was a time when we were at the very peak in the 80s of the sheer destructive megatonnage of nuclear weapons. Well, Pink Floyd wrote in their final album, The Final Cut, Roger Waters, who is pictured here, and he's one of the few rock singers from the former era who has not sold out to corporate influence in the national security apparatus of the Western world. And of course, he's paid a heavy price with being slandered and everything, because he also has taken a stand against the genocide in Palestine. When I lived in Ireland, U2, John Bono, still talked about American imperialism. Of course, now he's one of the Imperials. He's an apologist for genocide today. Well, so this is the song Two Suns at Sunset. And it is a song about what would happen if nuclear war, 1983. If nuclear war were to happen.
My rearview mirror, the sun's going down. Sinking behind bridges in the road. I think of all the good things that we have left undone. I suffer premonitions, confirm suspicions of the Holocaust to come. The rusty wire that holds the cord that keeps the anger in. Gives way, and suddenly it's day again. The sun is in the east, even though the day is done. Two suns in the sunset. Could be the human race is right.
Like the moment when the brakes lock and you slide towards the big truck. You stretch the frozen moments with your fear, and you'll never hear their voices, and you'll never see their faces. You have no recourse to the law anymore.
As the windshield melts and my tears evaporate, leaving only charcoal to defend.
Finally, I understand the feelings of the few.
Ashes and diamonds, foe and friend, we were all equal in the end.
That song was about the circumstance which John Kennedy called the final failure. He said, if we do the final failure, then will you have used those weapons. Well, in 2011, the British rapper Low Key, Palestinian in origin, specifically dealt with the colonial plight of Palestine, a genocide which, of course, started in rapid phase after the revolt of the concentration camp on October 7th, when there were atrocities committed against civilians. All the military personnel are fair game in an occupation, just like the British in Northern Ireland, according to international law. But the genocide began much earlier than that. Of course, there were colonial. The whole colonial project began with Sykes-Picot and the Balfour Declaration and the dividing up of the Middle East back in World War I, and continued up through various commissions and the British Mandate Palestine, and of course 1947-48 the so-called Nakba, which was genocidal. It wasn't just an expulsion; it was genocide. There were about 253 massacres and atrocities connecting with that, which makes it part of, and of course, according to international law, Raphael Lemkin, who coined the term genocide, a Polish Jewish emigre in World War II, to describe the policies of Nazis in occupied Europe, not only against Jews, but against Poles, Slavs, Roma, Eastern Russians, and everything of AVE, which are also part of the Nazi Holocaust, which actually took out about 25 million as far as actual killings are concerned, let alone the casualties of war. And 2011, after the Likud party supported Hamas in the election of 2006, something Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course Benjamin Netanyahu did direct incitement for the assassination of his predecessor, Yitzhak Rabin, who was one of the criminals of 48, but was moving toward trying to do some sort of a settlement, at least making those motions. Although his chief negotiator said that the Oslo Accords, he said that if I were Arafat, I would have refused it too, because it basically would have taken away all of their rights, as it were. And the ultimate solution, as growing numbers of people of conscience, Jews, Palestinians, people all over the world know that the only solution, of course, is one state with equal rights for everybody, and no privileged and second classes and apartheid and any of that. Well, low key, after the formation of the Gaza concentration camp, and that's a term used by an Israeli minister, which, as Norman Finkelstein has pointed out, is entirely accurate. And what's happening right now is the ghetto is being liquidated, like the Warsaw Ghetto in World War II, or preparing for the trains to Auschwitz, Birkenau, Belzec, Sobibor, Majdanek, etc. And it is genocide by Raphael Lemkins and the Genocide Convention language, which we are signatories to, but we are complicit under both parties. Well, periodically there was what Tel Aviv regime fascists called the mowing of the lawn, which was the killing of Palestinians. He wrote, especially mass murder within Gaza, and that is before the current high-speed genocide took off. Low-key wrote this song, Long Live Palestine. Next. And of course, that's the world we face today. And in our devotion to the imperialism, we're sacrificing ultimately everything that is valuable in our own constitution here. And this song was written 1971. The Beatles were broken up, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and Lennon was on the U.S. government's list. He was one of the targets of Operation Chaos, and ultimately the they secured his assassination. He was endlessly surveilled, and they secured his assassination shortly before Ronald Reagan's inauguration. And why don't we sing this closing hymn, this closing song together? Imagine. Yoko Ono helped compose a lot of the words, and so I give credit to both John and Yoko.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people sharing for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. Wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, or brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one.
As we close, we're going to return to a Bob Dylan song. This was sung, and one of the best versions, I think, was done by a group, Peter, Paul, and Mary. They've sang it in 1963, shortly after Dylan composed it, and within the next and this is the Civil Rights March of August of 63, where Martin King gave his "I Have a Dream," told the United States about his dream, and of course backed by the dream of thousands of well, actually millions of disenfranchised African Americans within, and of course of other disenfranchised groups. This was a time. This was before Stonewall, before several liberation movements within the United States, and it expresses a dream. It also expresses the issue of bystander guilt. Just like there are legends that "Sound of Silence" by Simon and Garfunkel, that Simon and Garfunkel sang in 1964, was a remembrance of the murder of Kitty Genovese in New York in 1964, when supposedly many people had heard her cries and no one had come to her help. And the issue of bystander guilt became very important, looking back also, including on the Holocaust during the time of the Nazis, and we can say now as well with the new crises in our time. Notice the words: Peter, Paul, and Mary.
How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? How many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? How many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? How many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? How many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee, for sharing your valuable time and insight with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
instead of our usual 10 to 15 minute discussion time, because the Social and Environmental Justice Committee meeting is happening right after this and Adam needs to take the computer, we will wrap up here for now, and all discussion should be taken out into the parish hall for our coffee and socializing hour. Again, thank you, Lee, for your time.
Thank you very, very, very much, Margaret, and everybody.
Now, please join us in the parish hall for further fellowship.